The Keepsake. This is a longer story than most I've told. The details are very important, so I tried my best to not leave anything out. A little background information. As young as the age of 5, my family and I have always been moving. Every few years we pack up our things and travel to a new home. Sometimes it's between cities, while others it's a shifting of provinces. My dad is a photographer for a sports publication. He frequently flies out for away games, but doesn't get time to really enjoy the places he goes because it's for business. He's in a place no more than a day, sometimes even hours. Now, as much as he's passionate about the perfect snapshot of the players in motion to accompany the headline stories, he loves nothing more than the opposite, which is exploring nature and taking pictures of what it has to offer. I'm proud of my dad for being as successful as he is, but I encourage him to put some change into his portfolio. I tell him to take up contracts that involve him being immersed in the outdoors. That way, he can go on adventures all over the world and have incredible stories to tell us about his experiences. Plus, on the upside, we won't have to move around so much just so he can get that good feeling with new scenery. I loathed the process of packing and then unpacking again. The worst of it was leaving behind friends. Just when I had got used to a school or my teachers and had my favorite places I'd like to visit, it was time to say goodbye. I'm the only child, so not even having a sibling to share all the emotions that happen when it comes to uprooting sucked. I felt like I was always alone. All I really had was my journal where I was able to pen my thoughts. It's obviously not the same, but it helped a little. In the last 3 years, my dad had started to make a generous salary with full coverage benefits. My mom finally got the luxury to stay home, although I know how much she wanted to work even if it meant part-time. Prior to my dad's raise that allowed her to permanently retire at age 42, she was a kindergarten teacher. I could see how much she loved her students. I remember she taught me my ABCs and basic counting before I was even enrolled into kindergarten. I felt like the smartest kid in the class. Now, though, all she does is unpack and organize the home after we moved. She has the responsibility of cooking dinner, doing laundry, going for groceries, and then just maintaining the house. It's kind of like a maid service. I felt bad, and I knew she resented my dad a little for making the decision for her to not work. If I were her, I would have spoken up. Down with patriarchy, am I right? I do see her most days drinking a glass of wine starting as early as 8 a.m. while she began the housework. I didn't mention it to my dad, but somehow I felt my mom was so unhappy that the alcohol helped her cope. I'm too scared to tell her she's got a problem, but I do kind of hope she stops it altogether. I turned 16 on August 17th. My parents threw a going-away party and my birthday on the same day. It was Saturday, and all my friends and the neighbors came over to our place. The inside of the house was full of packed boxes, but our backyard was empty, and it was huge. It was a great space to hold large gatherings, so they set up tents and tables. The theme was Great Gatsby, so everyone was wearing something bedazzled and fancy. I had a black and gold off-the-shoulder sequins dress with fringe borders around the arms and the bottom of the dress, feathers in my hair and bright red lipstick, and costume jewelry for days. I don't really like parties as much, especially when people fuss over me. I don't like it to be about me. I would rather have a night out at the movies, watching the latest Harry Potter installment, The Goblet of Fire, and then going for burgers and shakes. That's my ideal celebration. I guess with all the free time my mom had being a perfectionist, she planned out the whole event. I didn't want to take that little joy away from her. We had an illusionist do a show, a DJ, and a photo booth with lots of desserts like cupcakes and ice cream. There was about 150 people there mingling with each other. It was nice for the most part, spending time with everyone. Who knows when I would come back to pay a visit. I got a ton of cards with gift cards and money, but but the best present was from my friends. They had brought me a coil-bound journal. They customized the front and back with quotes and pictures of us, and then each of them wrote a message to me like a journal entry in the book. I would miss them a lot, I thought. The following week was moving day. We loaded everything onto the truck and were on our way from Calgary, Alberta, to San Francisco. I would be giving up Canadian winters altogether for mild summer weather for however long my dad thought it would be fit to stay out there. I slept most of the way through the journey with the occasional looking out of the window. There were so many sloping roads and uphill roads. I began to get a bit nauseous. We finally pulled into a roundabout street. The houses were like the ones you would see on those $1 million homes, huge on the outside with large property around. It's like you could build a second house right next to it. All the surrounding houses were super clean with no litter lying around. Our house was a sky blue color with white trimmings, stairs leading to the porch, 2 front Roman pillars by the entrance, windows everywhere. It looked like it was built in the early 2000s, so maybe about 5 years old, relatively new. The inside looked like it was recently remodeled with all the high-tech gadgets like touch-screen thermostats and automated lights. Whoever lived here must have been some kind of tech geek who really wanted the living space to mimic a robot, listening to every command with the push of a button. On one hand, cool, but on the other, the fear of something malfunctioning kind of scared me. My room had a huge window facing the front of the house. I don't want to sound creepy, but I could see right through into my neighbor's house. I'm sure they could do the same with ours. Did the previous owner not hear of blinds? The open concept during the day and letting light in was great, but at night, that was a different story. I've read a lot of books and seen shows where weirdly crazed people or criminals come out during the late evenings. I'll ask my parents to consider adding some privacy to our new place, especially the bedrooms. It will alleviate some of my anxiety of being watched. My mom stood in the doorway of my room as I was unpacking my things and organizing my room to my liking. "How's it going, Maya?" she said. "So far, great," I told her. "Might take me a solid week to settle here." "That's like a week shorter than the last house," my mom said. "You're getting good at this." "Yeah," I said. "It gets easier, but I really don't like it." "I know," she said as she sat down on the charcoal-colored hardwood floor next to me. "So listen, a little over a week from today, the new school year begins." "I'm aware," I replied. "Not looking forward to that either. I hate being the new kid. It's like I have to start all over again to make friends. There's no pamphlet that fills you in on what the latest gossip is at the school and who to stay away from, what the lunch menus are. I feel like I have to figure all that stuff out on my own." "I'm sorry," my mom said, caressing my back. "I know exactly how you feel, frustrated and tired." I don't know why, but I snapped back at her and said that she didn't know anything, that she doesn't know what it's like to have to worry about a reputation, because she stays at home with minimal interactions and doesn't even have a voice to speak to my dad to stop his incessant behavior of moving every few years. I instantly regretted what I said, as I saw tears beginning to well up in her eyes. She forced a smile and told me that the school was a 7-minute walk, and maybe we could check it out sometime tomorrow, after I was through with packing. She then got up and left the room. I felt like a brat for speaking to her like that, but I guess all that bottled up anger had nowhere else to go. The following day, my mom and I took a walk to the school. It was around 7:30 p.m. and the sunset was probably the most beautiful I've ever seen. A coral color, absolutely breathtaking. I apologized about the previous day, and she said it was fine, that I should speak my mind. I told her that maybe she should speak hers too, well, to my dad to try to get back to teaching, that I knew she missed it so much. "You're right, I do miss it," she said with a sigh. "Your dad is flying out tomorrow morning. When he gets back, I will definitely have that conversation." We stopped in front of the school. It was 2 stories high, with a large sign that read Lowell High School. It looked like any other school I've been to. There was a poster on the front door that said, "Welcome back, students." Here we go, I thought. The next afternoon, my mom and I went grocery shopping and picked up some school supplies. It was very hot, so I grabbed an ice cream sandwich and ate it in the car ride back home. My mom was reverse parking into the driveway facing the house across from us. While helping her unload the groceries, I saw an elderly woman sitting in the front window. She had slightly tanned skin with long white hair combed to the other side. Her eyes were a piercing blue color. She was wearing a pink sweater with a pearl necklace and blue powder dress pants. She was seated in a wheelchair. I made eye contact with her and gave a slight wave, but the woman just stared at me. Maybe she had bad eyesight or something, I thought. Awkwardly, I turned away and went inside my house. It was the end of the first day of school. I found all my classes and made a friend named Millie. She lived a street over from me, so we decided to walk home together. When I got to the front of the cul-de-sac, I told her I would call her tonight to set up a day where we can go sightseeing. I flipped open my cell phone and saw that my mom had texted. She had an interview with a local elementary school that was around the same distance of my new high school. She said she would be home a bit later and that there was a snack she had for me in the microwave. I responded with "way to go," and that I can't wait to talk about it when she gets home. My dad would be home this Saturday, so if she got the job, then that would be a huge discussion for sure. I hope no arguments break out. I closed my phone. When I looked up, my eyes shifted to the neighbor's window. There, again, was the old lady, but in different clothing, seated in the same wheelchair, looking out the window. It seemed like she was looking directly at me, like into my soul. So I emphasized that I was waving at her, but no reaction. I went inside and grabbed my food from the microwave. It was celery with peanut butter, cut up apples, and a cheese sandwich. I poured myself a glass of Sunny D and sat at the table and put the kitchen TV on while I ate. About an hour later, grabbed my backpack and went into my room. I went to close my blinds and change into something comfortable, but when I peered outside, the old lady was still seated in the window. Her head was, though, slightly tilted. Her eyes were looking up straight at me. I quickly shut the blinds. That cold stare made me scared. What was wrong with her, I wondered? How long was she seated there? Because when I had returned from school, she was there, and now after eating, she's still there. Were my eyes playing a trick? Was I imagining her? During dinner time, my mom broke the good news that she was offered a full-time position as a grade 3 teacher, and that in a couple of weeks she would have her own classroom of students. I was proud of her. I know there'll be major changes in how I handle the household responsibilities, but we'll make it work, she said. Before bed, I opened my new journal my friends had got me and wrote my first entry since we moved in. The weekend came faster than usual. Maybe it was all the homework, or I had a life that was more interesting than before. San Francisco was growing on me. Millie came over and we were getting ready to go check out the Full House. I was a pretty big fan of the show growing up. This would be one of the bucket list things I couldn't wait to check off. We map-quested the directions. It was about 15 minutes away. My mom was busy with housekeeping and preparing a special meal for my dad tonight to talk about her job offer, so she let me take the car out. It was 10:22 a.m. when Millie and I arrived to the Full House. At first, I couldn't believe I was actually there. Then we took pictures with my Polaroid camera. I was going to stick them in my journal and write all my feelings. Then, we stopped by the mall for a bit. It was 3:30 when Millie and I left the mall and bought a large pepperoni pizza and Slurpees on our way to my place. We passed a couple garage sale signs with balloons. The address matched the neighbor across from us. I pulled into the roundabout and saw 5 tables set up in the neighbor's driveway with lots of items on display. As I parked in our driveway, I saw my mom coming out of the house. "Maya, I'm gonna go check out the neighbor's garage sale. See what hidden treasures I can find," she said. "We'll come with you," I said excitedly. My mom and I loved checking out garage sales. There were often good finds and a few items I bought in the past that ended up being worth a couple $1,000s. I put the food in the house before walking across to the neighbor's place. I looked in the window, but the old lady wasn't there. There was a middle-aged man helping other buyers with prices. He was short, about 5'2", chubby, with light blonde receding hair. He was wearing brown corduroy pants and a wrinkled green polo. His eyes were the same blue as the older woman's. "Hi, I'm David," he said to my mom. "Welcome to the neighborhood. I didn't get a chance to formally introduce myself earlier. I could see that you were all busy moving in, so I kind of didn't want to intrude." "That's all right," my mom had said, laughing. "Glad we can finally meet." "Browse around, and if you need any help, let me know," said David. He walked away. Millie picked up a vintage Sky Dancer toy that she remembered playing with when she was a young girl. It's a ballerina with wings sitting on a base, and when you pulled a string, it would launch the toy into the air. It was in excellent condition. David said it belonged to his niece, who never really played with it. The cost would be $3. That was a bargain for a vintage doll. My mom picked up some art supplies like construction paper, glitter, and foam shapes. She said it would be great for when she starts teaching crafts to the kids. She handed David $4 and told me she was going to go pick up Dad from the airport. I told her I'll be waiting at home for them when she got back. I was then sifting through some boxes with books because I love to read. I picked up a couple mystery novels by Joanne Laurie Nixon and then came across a navy blue hardcover 8x10 book that had diary engraved on the front in gold. I opened it up and quickly flipped through it. This was someone's innermost written thoughts. The ink used was black, but the writing was so neat. I admired those that journaled like I did. The book belonged to someone by the name Josephine. I took the 8 novels I selected, and David told me it would be $5. I handed him the money. "I also found this," I said. "I think it was mistakenly put in the pile. The owner of the book, their name is Josephine." "Oh, yes. That's my Nana," said David. "She was such an interesting woman. She had so many stories to share. You just want to sit and listen forever." "Weird how it got into those boxes. I swear I had left it with the rest of her things," he said. Now this must have been too forward of a question for me to ask David, but I did it anyways. "What do you mean by was?" I said, slightly confused. "Well, my Nana lived such a fulfilling life," he said. "We celebrated her 100th birthday 5 years ago, but a few months after that birthday, she passed away. She was suffering from terminal cancer, but she still got up every morning looking her best. She loved sitting at the window looking outside, sometimes spending hours, not even saying a word. I often wondered where her mind was or what she was thinking," he said, smiling. I replied, "I usually pass by the window most days and I see an older woman in a wheelchair looking out. She never acknowledges me. Who is that?" "Oh," said David, "that's Josephine," he said, laughing out loud. My face turned pale. I didn't find that funny, and I could see Millie was a bit uncomfortable too, as she was listening to the conversation David and I were having. "But I thought you said she passed away 5 years ago," I said. In my mind, what's processing is, did he pay to get taxidermy done to her body? Wasn't that kind of thing illegal? I guess David knew of my suspicions when he replied, "If you're thinking I preserved her body and kept her, I can assure you she's buried in the local cemetery. However," he went on, "I was always the closest grandchild to my Nana. I was so used to her living with me, I didn't want to lose her. So I commissioned a guy in London to make a life-sized wax mannequin that looked exactly like my Nana before she passed. Sort of like the ones you'd find at the Madame Tussauds museums," he said. Ah, I thought. Everything now made sense. That's why whenever I passed by and waved at her, she wouldn't do it back, because she wasn't real. He told me it's normal to freak out. The other neighbors were at first when they saw the Josephine wax figure. It even made it in the local newspaper and a little segment on the news. He said that he received quite a bit of hate comments and labeled a lunatic, but he didn't care. He was happy. At this point, I just wanted to leave. The wax person and my initial taxidermy thought didn't ease the disgust I had felt. It was pretty weird that David did this, and creepy to the max. David insisted that he could bring Josephine out if I wanted to take a closer look, but I told him that wouldn't be necessary, and I already had to set the table for dinner because my dad would be coming back from his trip. "No worries," said David. "Maybe next time." He told me that I could keep Josephine's diary for free and read some of the amazing stories she had once told him. I thanked him, and I returned home. It was great seeing my dad. After dinner, my mom went to drop Millie home while I washed the dishes. By the time my mom came home, she and my dad sat down with a glass of wine each on the living room couch. I, on the other hand, went to take a shower and then got into my bed and took out Josephine's diary. It felt odd reading someone's personal stuff, but I was curious at the same time. I was briefly interrupted by my mom, who told me that Dad was delighted about the new job and he thinks it would be a great opportunity. I told her I was glad it all worked out between them. I went back to reading the journal. David wasn't kidding. Josephine was a fascinating woman with a fantastic life story. She was a nurse during World War II and had quite a few lovers in her lifetime. She beat up a lot of men when she was in her teens for just looking at her the wrong way. She was a career woman who wanted change, to be equal to males in wages and well respected. There were also secret recipes included and random thoughts. I wanted to read more, but it was already 12:30 in the morning and I was yawning, fighting to stay awake. I turned off the reading lamp on my night table and knocked out. That night, I dreamt of her. She was in her wheelchair, but this time instead of the wax mannequin in a gaze, her eyes had actual life, vitality in it. I remember telling her how I enjoyed the diary and that she was a real badass. She then asked me if I would like to be her friend. I remember saying sure. Then I don't know if she was saying open your eyes in my dream or I actually heard it like in my head, but I slowly opened my eyes, and in the dark corner by my door, I could see the shadow of an old woman in a wheelchair. I blinked twice really fast and she was gone. I nearly screamed, and then I tried to go back to sleep, but I kept tossing and turning. This incident wasn't the last. It was actually the beginning for many other strange encounters to follow. For weeks to come, I could see Josephine in the window every time I came home from school. She was still there, right up until nightfall. Every time, it seemed the wax figure looked more and more real. Like one day it seemed like she was smirking, and then the next day she was sad. Was I going completely bonkers? When I would wake up most mornings, I would smell a musky scented perfume, something like rose and jasmine with that talcum baby powder blend. My mother nor I had a perfume of that kind. I continued to read the diary, and I'll admit Josephine's entries intrigued me. Although the nights that I skipped the reading, my bedroom light would flicker every couple seconds. What would follow is I would be visited by her in my dreams. She was never violent or made me fearful. She just wanted to be friends. I also started to be a bit more obsessed with the diary, and I was agitated with the people around me. I remember blowing off Millie a few times when she asked me to go over to her place. She told me she wanted to hang out, but I told her I didn't care. She didn't speak to me at school for the next couple of weeks. I felt really, really bad. And so things just got worse at home. I felt too tired to do my homework, completely drained. I just wanted to sleep. And every time I did, Josephine would show up in my dreams. I was on the very last entry of her journal. It was dated June 13th, 1993. Today I've been given some news. I have cancer. While some would consider that devastating, I'm the least bothered. The doctors want to start me on a medication plan to beat this, but I'm already in my 90s. What's the point? although I would do it in a heartbeat for my grandson David, who's very fond of me and takes care of me so well. I'd rather look out the window and think back to all my life events that I'm most proud of. I'm usually alone anyway in this house while my grandson works. It'd be nice to have a friend, just to pass the time. A young woman, perhaps. Someone I can retell my tales. Possibly inspire them to do something greater in their life. No one notices me as I sit in the window day after day. No friendly waves or smiles. I guess the neighbors don't care. Could it be they want to avoid the obligatory connection because I look hopeless to them as I sit here slowly dying? That's the reality. If anyone would just look in my direction with a positive light, I will be gladly happy and befriend them. I will never let go, ever. I thought, as I finished Josephine's last entry. All she really wanted to do was to tell her story and inspire a strong movement involving women to continue her legacy. However, that last sentence of befriending someone and never letting go was kind of aggressive. I got raised hairs on the back of my neck. She asked to be my friend in my dreams, and since I invited her in, it seems she's been hovering around. I appreciated the sentiment, but I didn't want a dead person's spirit following me for the rest of my life. I took the book and pushed it as far into the kitchen garbage bin as I could. I then threw in wrappers and plastic bottles on top, so it was nicely buried in there. I called up Millie and apologized about the way I treated her, and I filled her in on all the supernatural crap I was experiencing. She was spooked, for sure. I told her I'd see her in class tomorrow. I then went to bed. The next morning, I was putting my textbooks in my bag when I found Josephine's diary on my desk. I was wide-eyed. How the heck did it get here? It was impossible. I went about my day even though it bothered me. And then after school, I was passing by David's house. I rang his doorbell, avoiding eye contact with the front window because I knew the wax figure was there, and I wasn't about to look at that memorialized Josephine, which in my head looked like it was possessed. He said hello, and I handed David the diary. He asked me why I chose to return it. I told him I learned so much about Josephine, but I didn't feel right about keeping her things. David told me he had a whole volume of her diaries, if I would like to borrow them and look through them. I thanked him for his offer and said maybe another time. I then asked him if he's felt any strange presence in his house while having the wax figure. He said nothing out of the ordinary. Sometimes, if he loses something and thinks about it, it will show up where his eye can catch it. He feels it's Josephine's spirit trying to help him. He doesn't fear it because he trusts it. I was also completely weirded out, and after leaving his house, I felt relieved to have got rid of the diary at least, and I thought it would solve everything. I couldn't be more wrong, because tonight I was sleeping, and I woke up feeling so thirsty. I slightly opened my eyes and reached for the glass of water on my nightstand. I took a couple of large gulps, and I was leaning over to put the glass back. There was a moonlight rays shining through my blinds. I saw a shadow in the shape of Josephine sitting on my bed. The glass toppled over to the floor and broke. My mom quickly entered my room, concerned to see if I was okay. She helped me clean up the mess and pointed out how flushed I was as if I saw a ghost. She had no idea. I wanted to tell her what happened and that we possibly had an entity in the house, but she probably wouldn't even believe me. Now Josephine is always around me. It's as if she's bound herself, and no matter what I say out loud to her, to something that clearly has no physical form, she won't go away. And my greatest fear of being watched? Well, it's happening. At this point, even though I hate to think about changing residences, I'd rather have my dad decide it's time to move. But then again, I doubt the spirit would stay in San Francisco. I mean, her book clearly promised to befriend someone forever. I'm that someone she befriended, and forever is well, they have no end. All in all, I'm gonna be haunted indefinitely. Hey, Scary Story fans! I'm Suzanna Dutt, and thanks for listening to these short tales written and narrated by me. I hope you enjoyed them. If you have a creepy story that's fiction or non-fiction and would like me to share it in the next featured video, feel free to email it to the address in the description below. In the meantime, sweet dreams.